Right, good morning, everyone. It's 10 a.m. and I'm calling our executive committee meeting to order. And I will defer to Ben, or do we have a quorum?
Let's do roll call. We start with Secretary Stuart Knox via Abby Snee. Director Nancy Farias via Javier.
Here.
Nice to see you.
Yeah.
Herrera is
I'm
here. Jamil Dada is.
Yes.
Ms. Diane Factor is here.
Present.
Angelo is here. And Mr. Stensley.
I am here.
We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That is a quorum.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ben. So our meeting is being live streamed for public viewing on the CWDB YouTube channel and is being recorded. The California Workforce Development Board Executive Committee is meeting here in Sacramento. A link to our meeting agenda, board packet information can be found on the CWDB website, which is cwdb.ca.gov under State Board Meetings and Archives. Public comment is now open and will be heard after each agenda item and again prior to adjournment. Public comments will be accepted via the CWDB YouTube channel by email at boardpubliccomment@cwdb.ca.gov or I'm happy to recognize them. We can allow for 2 minutes for each comment per subject, so please make them concise. All public comments received by email will be read aloud during the public comment period noted on the agenda and will be included in the meeting minutes as part of the public record. So our first item in the action portion is the consideration of approval of the February 12th Executive Committee meeting summary. And are there any questions or comments from the committee before we vote?
Should do, except as presented.
We'll wait till
Gotta do the comments first.
yeah. Who's manning the?
Emily.
Oh, okay, Emily. Yeah, Emily, do we have any public comments?
No public comment in the inbox and no YouTube comments.
Okay. And then we have a motion from Jamil. Do we have a second?
Second.
Javier seconds. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Do we need
Any
to,
nays? Just let me know if there's any nays.
are there any nays or abstentions? Is this a hybrid meeting or this is in person?
Is there some
So
person?
we don't have to do roll calls for. Okay. All right, so the motion passes unanimously. So Kaina will now share us in the updates and discussion section, master plan for career education.
Thank you so much. And I'm actually gonna, if Abby is willing, we'll kick it over to her for a little bit, but I just wanted to mention that, last week at WorkCon 2025, we did a presentation on how to implement both, K-16 collaboratives with the master plan and the Jobs First initiative. And I've started rounding out conversations with the community colleges as well as board directors on how to integrate these 3 platforms of the stool, as the governor calls it, into their day-to-day operations to a certain extent. And so in addition to that, announced that I'll be going on a roadshow to go see the 13 territories, to meet with the local board directors as well as industry trade representatives to aggregate some information to advance the regional plans. And so in concert with that, we'll be inviting all the members of the board who are representative of either those industries or that region to come with us and see what's going on the ground, to understand how implementation will work in concert with our community college network. So with that, I'll go ahead and pass.
Great, yeah, and perfect segue, kind of. So I think people probably know that the master plan was released, I think it was on April 23rd. And I think we're kind of teetering on implementation and moving forward with some dimensions of it. There are a few elements that are wrapped up in the budget. We'll see where that lands, and that includes the state coordination, the regional coordination, which would be at labor, and then the development of the career passport, which would live with the community colleges, which is being envisioned as a cornerstone of the master plan and a tool to increase skills-based hiring by allowing people, like really giving people a platform through which they can demonstrate skills earned outside of traditional academic settings. So that work is proceeding. one role that we all have, and I'll say that collectively in that development, is some employer vetting. This is a tool is only as useful as employers perceive it to be. So, starting to make some connections to do some initial research with employers, with some, ideas here for employers to talk with. Have had a great call with the Cal Chamber, which is helping identify members. We'll have a call in a couple of weeks with SHRM, the Society for Human Resource Management in California, to help with connections. And I think that this board and network is really well positioned to help out with that. I've also gotten some headway on regional coordination through some philanthropic support. Boston Consulting Group has identified 3 use case regions, the far north, Inland Empire, and LA, and did a series of probably 60, 70 interviews. No surprises, just silos, fragmentation. A very basic challenge is regional boundaries that are all different for the 3 different systems. So I think over the next few months, we're likely to have conversations here about some realignment of the, some of the regional planning unit boundaries. The community colleges is starting similar conversations. So, just to have alignment, really identifying where effective coordination takes place, how the groups that have risen to the surface to effectively serve as lead regional coordinators could be sustained, as well as how to build capacity within those more sustainable institutions to take that role. So I think some really great start, and then moving towards pilots at each of those regions to test some of the concepts I think have the most traction so far in LA, in what looks like a partnership supported by the Hilton Foundation to build on the really impressive work that Unite LA has done, with a lens of opportunity youth as a population target, with healthcare as a sector target, and really looking at where systems get clogged and where the pain points are, and bringing in some capacity building technical assistance to figure out some systems changes to move through those pain points, all to that element of the master plan that I think really deserves more attention than it might have gotten, which is no wrong door, especially for opportunity youth, who tend to be left out. Well, by definition, they're left out of the system. So I think that's a summary and update. Yeah.
Just a quick follow on, which is, based on the work that she's just mentioning, to solidify some of that, the Workforce Development Board and the Chancellor's Office is in the process of developing an MOU to spell out what alignment would mean along the lines of industry-based engagement, because they all have advisory groups at the core of the community college as well, and integrating that information with what we have on the 45 local board members.
Thank you, Kana and Abby. We want to note and welcome Jeremy Smith as well. Thank you, Jeremy. Does anybody have any comments or questions from the committee on this item? One question I have is, when do you anticipate the schedule for your?
Yes. So the first week that we're planning the roadshow is going to be the second week of June, and it will be rolling through October. And so the planning of this is going to take some time, but we're segmenting it by the state. So the first 4 territories that we'll attack will be the North State, also because of logistical challenges and some other things, but also because I spent a lot of time in LA recently. So making sure that we're touching some of the other areas of the state first. So the first 4 will most likely be North State, Redwood Coast, Bay Area, and then I think the 4th is still in limbo, but we're looking at San Joaquin. And then for the September board meeting, we're really probably going to do something more capital area to try and get all the board members here.
Great.
And so we can do a more rounded out visit around that 23rd, 25th date, I believe it is.
Thank you. Emily, do we have any public comment?
No public comment from the inbox, no public comment on YouTube.
Thank you. We're going to shift to.
Could also ask the room.
Sorry, what?
Could also ask the room.
Oh.
Do you have any comments?
Our next topic is the response to the Los Angeles fires, and I know we'll share that.
Yeah, so in the last full board meeting, there was some interest in involvement in LA Rises. Obviously, this, because of the way that our chamber functions, if we have multiple folks being representative of this body, then it could create issues with Bagley Keene. And so last week at WorkCon, I was able to meet with Jorge Marquez, who is the chair for LA County, and he is asked to make a presentation at the next full board meeting and to invite all participants. In between this executive meeting and that board meeting, those who have advanced their interest, I will introduce them to both Jorge and Kelly LeBlanco, who is the head of the EDC for the county, to be able to coordinate what types of efforts they would need assistance and mobilization with. Very much so. Thank you to Diane for raising earlier that her interest in advising. So I'll provide you his contact information post.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you for that update. Are there any comments or questions from the committee? Emily, do we have any?
No public.
And okay. Thank you.
I'm visiting.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Our next topic is jobs first. And
Yep, so very much so a similarity to the master plan for career education, really doing these efforts in synchronicity, if you will. And part of the roadshow will be a convening of the HRTCs or a request of convening of the HRTC, so that our board members and some of the ancillary folks that are coming with us can see how the in-region discussions on the regional plan, setting up of the catalyst fund, advancing through implementation will work. So we can get some real understanding of what the mechanics are on the ground, what issues that they're having, and how we can be responsive to what industry is raising. Because we also know that in the regional plan settings, there are industries identified that are not necessarily in the statewide blueprint as aggregated, and ensuring that we still have pipelines for workforce development within those areas of regional growth is going to be paramount to the success of the overall program. And so within the roadshow's element will be a deep dive into what is going on regionally to advance the regional plan. How are they able to leverage that? Because it is now a qualified SEDS or SEDS equivalent for most of these territories to obtain additional federal resources and give opportunities for them to meet the folks who are on the state side who have the ability to braid those resources with federal opportunities to advance some of the projects that are identified. In many ways, it's going to be an opportunity for us to bank projects and to get an understanding of what the landscape of interest from those communities are, so that we can right-size program development. Right? If we have an opportunity to see that there's $1 billion in economic development programs that create 10,000 jobs, how do we create a program that actually meets those needs in a way that we can advance the thing without having to braid resources through programs that are on a state level definition? Instead, aggregating that information to a pool of resources to go after those investment opportunities.
And SEDS is the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy for qualified regions for federal EDA project funding.
That's correct. And in the last 2 months, all 13 regional plans have now been qualified by the EDA as federally recognized SEDS equivalents. And it gives them an opportunity to leverage a bank of information for their applications to federal resources.
Very strategic. Any comments or questions from the committee? Emily?
No public comment.
We'll now shift to our proposed advisory group update from Kana.
Cool. Also, last meeting advanced a request to board members to solicit their interest in being involved in advisory groups. Based on the structure that we've determined, it will be led by an individual supported by staff at the Workforce Development Board. And what we'll be asking them to do is to work within the framework of the 45 local boards to obtain interest from those areas who are aligned on the industries that are identified within the master plan. I'm sorry, within Jobs First. And secondarily, the items associated with the master plan, there will also be supplemental advisory groups to within, like, how do we advance the career passport? How do we advance some of the items within credit for prior learning? And to continue those dialogues over the year. One of the issues that we're bumping into is we have a lot of interest in running similar styles of tables. So one of the things that we've been considering recently is to put up a roster of what would be available and then ask for folks to self-select into those. Mainly because there's a lot of interest in, well, we have a significant number of board members who are in the healthcare space, who are in the traditional anchors, and we really need some more coverage in some of the pilot sectors of the blueprint itself. And so we'll be advancing some additional information out there. What is going to be in a lot of sense, and this is where the roadshow comes into play too, is that is kind of an illustration of what we're asking those folks to do, is to meet with members of the community, bubble up the information from the industry participants within the region and the territory, and then feed that information up to the state so it can be aggregated to get a better understanding of the demand side of job creation within our regions. This is a longer term effort. We don't expect it to be very quick to really gain that industry trust. And that's why we're going to be leveraging board members, in some sense, the Chamber of Commerce, if we can. I know Jennifer Haley is currently on the board of the Chamber of Commerce as well. And so looking to expand our reach by utilizing the networks of our board members in more particular. So in the next, hopefully before this next full board meeting, we'll be sending out a packet of information related to what the roadshow will entail. And in a lot of sense, those are some of the elements that we're asking these advisory groups to do to then bubble up the information back up to the state level. So if you think about, we have 45 local boards, each with their own industry groups and industry advisory groups. How do we get that information led into this larger interface to then aggregate on a statewide level? So we have a good picture of where growth and demand is actually happening to, accommodate what is an ever diminishing supply of resources.
A very coherent and strategic way of framing it all together.
Now, hopefully we can execute it. It's always the hardest part. It looks good on paper. But when you get to the weeds and really starting to have these dialogues, we're going to know and realize that there are going to be things that need to change. And frankly, we need to build trust in communities on both the community organizing front and with the industry participants and those who create jobs.
It's a great way to do it, especially because in our state, we have so many distinctly varied and different dynamic regions. So
And economies.
it'll be great.
Thank you. Hannah, any comments or questions from the committee? Emily?
The public comment.
It's going to be more involved than you thought it would be.
So our next topic is the continuing conversation regarding the eligible training provider list.
Thank you. So we've had our first official meeting. We did really just hear all the warts and issues and situational things that we could try and reflect upon and really try to bucket these in 3 opportunities. What are things that are going to require federal input, changes, adjustments? What are things that are within the state control but require legislation, require a secondary action? And what are things that we can do relatively quickly that may be procedural, process oriented? And so now I'll go ahead and take it over to the house for next steps from there.
Yeah, so our next meeting's next Thursday. And I think, we got a lot of issues on the table. I think it's now next steps is to really start sifting those through. But we're going to ask the members to, as they sift and they determine what recommendations they want to put forward, what actually benefits the customer, the worker, who we serve. Sometimes what's, how would you say, administratively convenient isn't always what's best for the customer. So I think we need to put those lens and ask that question moving forward as we bring things forward to the board. And then I think there'll be other issues emerging because if you recall, a lot of the issues, brought forward are from education. And so, and a lot of the issues they'll be identifying, we created this other thing like a parking lot of really issues that are outside that can't be resolved by the ETPL discussion. Because often the ETPL discussion is a proxy for alignment issues between education and workforce development. And those are other policy discussions that need to take place that's beyond the ETPL context. So right-size ETPL, bring forward recommendations to optimize that policy lever to bring alignment and address the needs of our customers, our workers, and then also bring forward other policy issues that are barriers to the alignment between education and workforce. then, so that's our next steps. We'll be going probably through August. And we'll bring forward the recommendations in the future meeting.
Thank you, Javier. We appreciate you and Director Ferris's efforts on this. Any comments or questions from the committee? To Javier on this? Emily?
No public comment.
Our last topic is the revised draft resolution, standards for infrastructure related funds. And we're going to defer to our own committee members, Bruce and Jeremy and Diane. All three of you are here.
Yep.
So however you guys want to facilitate this conversation, we defer to you.
If you don't mind, I'll open really quickly by just saying, thank you for the opportunity to, especially after a discussion from our last full board meeting, to enter in some of the commentary that was received both in that forum, but also was received via email from some of our members. And those are reflected in the edits that you see here. Obviously, it's somewhat toned into a way that we feel that there is appropriate level of understanding and something that we can actually perform. One of the issues that I would just like to raise is number 9 creates a significant challenge for our organization in terms of staff capacity and opportunity to do what is explicitly written in this, and just because of the multitude of, well, especially in the current context, the multitude of things that are going on, which are really outside of our control. And given what we are currently emboldened to do, offering up best practices and really trying to foster continuous improvement of the system, we do it to a certain extent, but having it stipulated to the way it is actually puts some, I would say, difficult burdens on our organizational structure as current. So that would be the one thing that I would offer in this commentary right now.
And thank you for that context. So, Diane.
Up in a couple of things on the macro come back to, but on the specific on number 9, I hear you loud and clear. To get into the weeds on this, is it the last clause there, the phrase to ensure the success of public funding and creating good jobs?
I think it's a combination of that plus the expectation of our influence over federal.
Because it's the influence question, because I read this 2 ways. One is we should be monitoring, i.e. be aware of, be informed by.
And that I
sort of benign.
We do.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's implied then the turn that says that we're going to influence public policy across the nation. So I don't know if there's an easy fix for that, but I hear what you're saying.
You kind of already are doing that, right? You want to ensure the correct use of public funds.
Yeah, that's sort of.
Maybe not federally, not in Montana,
Right,
but
right. That is always our desire.
here,
Yes,
right?
that is definitely.
So you're, by virtue of you existing, I think, are doing that.
Yeah,
How you ensure it is a good
that's the
question.
question that I
That's
have.
fine. So, I mean, I think to Bruce's point, is it the last? Is it the last
From
clause?
2 on, yeah.
For the verb.
Well, I mean, I assume you're continuously monitoring labor standards.
Yes.
Models at the state and local levels. I hope you are. I mean,
I don't.
Well, it's a fair question.
right?
So, yes.
The staff that you have.
Yes.
Stopping after the work levels, maybe.
Sorely.
And if not here, where does the state that?
Right.
I mean, that's a bigger
Yeah.
question. I mean, it's coming here, but.
Mhm.
Would you like us to wordsmith number 9?
Happy to take any.
Or do we want to,
Happy to take any investment.
do you want to do it in real time? I don't know what the chair will. the
Well,
chair is here.
I have a couple things I'd like to
Please.
say. I think that, yes, it could be wordsmithing, monitor, ensure. But, and I understand that some things are outside of the purview of this department. There's the labor standards and there's OSHA, which have severe shortages of staff. We were actually going to do a workforce development program to create more people that could fill those jobs.
I've always wanted to do.
Yeah, that was one of the things pre-pandemic, but, so the word monitor, as an active verb where you'd actually go, being a former Cal OSHA industrial hygienist, a compliance officer, I don't think we intend that.
Okay.
But I think what we do intend, and I've been on workforce boards for many years, is that we don't fund training for low wage, poverty wage jobs.
Sure.
And even though we've always had that in our goals, I've been on boards where we hear reports of people being trained, you know, for really substandard jobs with no future that lock them into poverty rather than give them a career. And I know we all agree on that. So that was sort of my thinking, that we just uphold that standard that we all agree on and do so. I know we don't have the capacity for compliance. Yeah.
Okay.
But in Jobs First, you can look at your employer partners and see, would your kids work there? Yeah.
Mhm.
Would you feel that they're safe and have a future? That kind of sentiment that I would like to see. And so we can wordsmith it. I think the whole document is really an intent of philosophy at this point, which California and our governor strongly upholds. You know, and I don't think we should just bow down to what's happening at the federal level. I think being prudent, we should uphold our standards, and that's what I hear loud and clear from our governor. And so this whole document is an attempt to just say we're with you.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And just don't forget about those things. But I trust with your Jobs First that you are going to align with employers, you know, that provide not just living wage, but safe working conditions, you know, benefits and so forth. And it's complicated right now. It's really complicated. I feel you. I understand very well how this Workforce Investment Act is funded, you know. But I also think that in the scheme of things, we can uphold our part.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I'll share some thoughts, but first I want to open up to the rest of the committee if anybody has any comments or questions. So I want to echo, you know, what kind of said, the three of you, you know, have put an enormous effort into this. And so we appreciate, you know, your efforts, and comments are just intended for you to have feedback from some of your peers on their perspectives. As long as, you know, in terms of Jeremy's question regarding the wordsmithing and everything, as long as the three of you are comfortable taking into account or not the input, you know, the feedback that you received, and however you want to frame this, it's your prerogative of how you want it ultimately, you know, obviously as long as it's in compliance with legal, how you want it presented for a formal vote. The input could influence who ends up voting or who doesn't, and so that's a calculus that you have to make in terms of the trade-offs involved. But you know, we really respect your leadership, and so however you choose to determine that, you know, we'll defer to you, and then we can take it to the full board for a vote.
What do you want to wordsmith today? I mean, Brooke has some specific questions in there about certain things. Do we want to attack those today, or do you want us to take that perspective back and think about it and send you something else to look at? I
think it's up to the board.
There's no wrong answer here, right?
I think it's more what would be instructive for your purposes, and how much you feel would be helpful in this forum, or how much you want to follow up offline. We will extend the courtesy. You know, we're happy to get into this. Whatever would be your program. I know, again, we want to recognize that this has been a long effort.
My experience is if you wordsmith in a group like this, it'll never happen. We're giving credit. I think he's telling you the three of you should do it. So I think.
Well, I don't mean necessarily.
I didn't pick up on that. So thank you for.
No,
yeah,
I don't
explaining
know.
that, yeah.
The three of you are in charge. You guys should do it.
Okay.
So-
No. So I'm not necessarily saying about the individual words. I mean more of the intent behind some of the questions. If there's some further clarification or context needs to be, that's easier to be done, we will extend that courtesy. But in terms of how you guys end up doing that, like I said, we defer for you guys to, you know, whether you accept changes or provide feedback, however you want to do it, that'll be something we can do.
Okay. just for my take on that, I agree with Diane. I mean, I think the point here, is language in one of your comments in the blue bubbles here. This is an advisory and aspirational document. We want this to be as much advisory specific as we can do.
Yeah.
But I don't want to get bogged down in telling people what I want a statement of principles and policies and purpose. And I think we're pretty close.
Yeah.
We're pretty much there.
May I offer this then?
Yeah.
We'll come back and scrub it for language based on the monitor question and on the insurance for something that we think we can do at the level of what we have right now, right? And offer that to the three of you for a final.
Okay.
And
That'd
then
be
at that final
Yeah.
point, once I get confirmation from the three of you that we were good with the language that, and Fabrizio as well. We'll put it on the action item for a vote the next.
For the full
board meeting.
Last comment I have, I mean, the specific antecedent to this was ancient history, a year and a half ago, where there was some concern with a bunch of labor representation that came into the room and had concerns about there were state infrastructure, federal infrastructure monies spent on jobs that were not meeting anybody's real sense of what is a quality job. And then the question became, right, do we have a policy about that? And the answer was no. And so that's what we're trying to
That's
address. Is
right.
that big picture, it says, let's try and express a sentiment, a purpose that says we're really about the good jobs first language. And if we get there, then I think you're right. I don't want to interfere with the day-to-day. Sure we do, but I yeah, I know it's funny. So yeah, we don't want to do that.
Yeah. Appreciate it.
I think that's a good frame to take us back to the start. You and me and Fabrizio didn't come up with this. We heard from the public. Public asked for this, and I don't even know if we were assigned to a subcommittee, but we kind of took it upon
We kind of
ourselves.
accidentally found ourselves there. Yeah.
So like, just to remind everybody, right, like this is sort of hearing from people who come before us.
No, that context is important. We were still recognizing your guys' efforts because you've been doing.
I understand.
But that is true. That is an important point, is that was the impetus of it, was that.
Yeah.
And there's a tragic truth to the reality that committees don't really do things. It will come back to the staff.
So I will
next week,
commit our
right?
staff to provide
Yeah.
the final adjustments by next Wednesday.
But it's very possible the public will be at the next meeting.
And able to comment directly on. the
Yes,
changes
and-
that's included in there.
And, you know, the world has changed since we started
Oh my
this
God.
really substantially, as we all know. And I appreciate you, putting new energy into the board by, you know, bringing new people on and, from both, and new industries. But I think that, my sense, of who we are in California is that we are going to be a test case for a lot of green economy jobs and green manufacturing, and now with the fires, you know, rebuilding with better roofs and safer grid lines and all these infrastructure things that are really critical, we have to have some quality considerations. And I guess it is because I'm an industrial hygienist and worked for many years as a compliance officer. I've been on the sites of explosions and thermal runaways and places where people have been hurt in oil fields. And these are very dangerous jobs. So it isn't just wage, it's working conditions. And, you know,
Yeah.
that has been decimated at the federal level. And I think what would destroy our whole efforts is if we put money and education and train people and they walk into a disaster and then there's the whole environmental justice movement that says, not in my backyard. I don't want to live with these things. So we're in a context, and I would love those kinds of discussions of the context we're living in safely, you know, because I know you're worried about federal funding, but
We are,
to our work. Yeah, what's that?
no, I was just saying, this is a federal system.
Yeah, I'm well aware. I was there actually lobbying for the 1998. Okay, that I worked for the AFL-CIO and did a lot of that work. I'm really aware, but you can't let down certain standards and certain quality propositions that we live with, you know, based on a fear you might lose some money. I mean, what is lives cost? What is, you know, it's really also, I got changed after fires. And those were not about hydrants and reservoirs. The trees were bent over like this, the winds howled. I've lived in LA all my life. That was climate change. And we have to think differently about how we build the jobs and the infrastructure from now on. And I guess I've always heard that, and I'm thank you for this forum to be on my soapbox, but we have a job here to be, you know, to align ourselves with building the kind of future we want.
Thank you for your passion and your perspective on this important issue. As kind of mentioned, staff will take all of this information and incorporate it in terms of the language by Wednesday.
Wednesday of next week.
Wednesday of next week, and then it'll be shared with the three of you and for feedback, and then the whole board, and we'll plan for a vote.
If you could just, without being an enforcement, or put a little passion back, okay? Make it feel like who we are, all right? Yeah.
Instead of having a written document, we could have a spoken word document by Diana.
We could have a ceremony, yeah.
Might need some poets and to compliment the attorneys on this.
But I think we kind of need that right now. We need the resolve. We're gonna get through this. Yeah.
Sure, it won't go to the board unless you guys are comfortable with it.
Well, thank you for saying that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you, unless there's any further comments or questions on this topic. We have our perspective. Thank you, staff, for taking that effort.
Yes, I really want to thank Brooke.
Yes.
Me too.
Thank you. So, Emily, are there any public comments on this topic?
No public comment.
I like the passion. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other business? Okay, general public comments. This portion of the agenda provides an opportunity for members of the public to address the committee on items of interest within the jurisdiction of the committee. Comments are limited to no more than 2 minutes per speaker. Pursuant to the Bagley-Keene Act, the committee shall take no discussion or action other than a referral on any issue brought forth here. Emily, do we have any public comment? All right, with no additional public comment and no further business, the meeting of the California Workforce Development Board Executive Committee is adjourned at 10:38.
Wow.
Thank you, everyone.
Now you can go watch
Liberated.
release.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure he's already 100,000 words there.
Yeah.
What's that?
There's another comment.
Memory and the attention to that,
Was there-
passion